One of the things that's drawing the peace movement together here in Oregon most effectively, I think, is the Guard Home campaign. There are now 54 organizations involved with this. Oregon PeaceWorks is proud to be one of them. And here to talk to us about it today is one of the people who's been leading this all the way through and has been helping out at the national level as well. Former naval commander who's now turned very full-time peace activist. Would you welcome Leah Bolger?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Also the new National Vice President of Veterans for Peace.
Thank you very much. First of all, I've got some handouts, and I'll start them one way and the other way. And I made enough of those for everybody to have one. But there are several other documents on the table back there under the VFP flag, and I don't have copies for everybody on those. But there is a clipboard that says if you want a copy of any of those documents, just sign up and I'll send it to you electronically. So please look them over, because there's a bunch of stuff back there that I think will be helpful to you in promoting this legislation. So, yes, I am heavily involved with the Bring the Guard Home campaign. I've been working on the Oregon campaign, but I'm also on the National Steering Committee for the national campaign. So I'm really occupied with this. You know, this Bring the Guard Home thing is something that it's different, and it's not just based on our feelings as peace activists that, you know, the war is wrong, it's immoral, it's illegal. We all agree about that. But we're not trying to change people's opinions about that. We all agree on those things. But what we're trying to do with this campaign is attack the legal aspect of the deployment of military troops and approach it from a different angle than we've ever approached this issue in the past. Now, I mentioned it's a nationwide campaign. It started just over a year ago, last January. A House representative in Vermont introduced a bill to say that he wanted their governor to refuse to release control of their National Guard. Well, it didn't get passed, but it lit a spark, and now there are states all over the country. There are 21 states and the District of Columbia who have active campaigns to enact legislation in their houses, in their state legislature, to keep the Guard in their state from deploying. So that is really remarkable when you think about the fact that a lot of states their state legislatures don't meet every year, or like ours, or they only meet for a couple months. To consider that almost half the country has now got a campaign going is really, really remarkable. There are 7 states that have introduced legislation. We were the 6th, Maryland was the 7th. And also we have 14 different state legislators that have signed on to co-sponsor either the bill or the resolution or both, and that is more than any other state. I think most of the states have maybe 5 or 6 co-sponsors. So, you know, it's really, really inspirational and motivating to see how Oregon has come along on this campaign. But I want to make sure today that everybody really understands the campaign and the nuances of it, so that you can talk to people and you can promote this campaign and feel comfortable in defending the pushback that you're going to get and the arguments that you hear. So I want to go over the theory behind the legislation, and that's on your handout so that it can remind you if you forget. But the point of this is, as I mentioned, it's a legal challenge. And you know, the president must have approval from Congress to deploy military force, to use military force. We know that, and the president knows that. And in 2002, Congress gave him that authority. But in their wisdom, in Congress's wisdom, they made that authority very, very specific. And it had language in it that was very precise and said, yes, President Bush, you're authorized to use military force, but it is to accomplish two missions, two specific missions. One was because the Saddam Hussein regime was considered to be a threat to our government, and the second was to enforce the UN resolutions about weapons of mass destruction and hunt for those. So now Saddam Hussein is dead, and we know there are no WMD. So there is no legal basis for this authorization anymore. Its terms have been met. So what we're saying is that unless Congress passes another A.U.M.F. authorization for the use of military force, or they declare war under the War Powers Act, then there is no legal basis to send them overseas, and it is up to our governor to challenge this. In fact, it would be unlawful for him to release his troops. And it is his obligation to stand up and challenge this authorization. So that's the point of the whole thing. It's not an easy thing for people to understand, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what the law says and what the law doesn't say. And I will agree that maybe there is room for interpretation that, oh, this isn't lawful, the governors can't refuse this. There is room to make an argument on either side, but what we're saying is, what's the downside of pushing this? What, we win? I mean, if we don't win, our Guard troops go. If we win, our Guard troops stay. And what we really would push for is for this to go to the courts, for this to be cited in court, and to bring up, all the legal ramifications of the war in the first place, but this challenge. And if you really want to look at the law, the authorization for the use of military force applies to all the military force. Now, our military has three components. It has the active duty, it has the reserves, and it has the National Guard. But this campaign is about the National Guard because we can't do anything on a state level about those other two components. But the Guard, the governor has a unique situation in that in normal circumstances, when there is not an A.U.M.F., then the governor is in control of these troops. So that's why we're pursuing this angle. We're not ignoring Congress. We think Congress should do something, but we have a power here. We have an opportunity here to work on this component of the military. So that's the reasoning behind it. Does anybody have any questions about the legal reasoning, the theory of it? Yes, Vernon.
I see mention of Iraq in here. What about Afghanistan?
This legislation does address Afghanistan as well. Yes, it does. The A.U.M.F. that authorized people to go to Afghanistan was passed in 2001. Because our Guard is supposed to go to Iraq, that's what I've really been focusing on, is that A.U.M.F. But the A.U.M.F. that was passed in 2001, we also don't believe is valid because its terms were very, very broad, and it was like, Bush could send people anywhere to fight the war on terror, and it's open-ended, and you can't have an open-ended authorization like that. So it was flawed when it was passed. Yes. Well, her question is, what would legally close that authorization? Well, because there is no date set in the authorization, when the terms have been met, and that would be, Congress would have to pass something that says the terms have been met, there is no longer any valid.
Yeah,
right.
One entire fire season, one entire ski season.
Right, and the other point is that was made on the air on a radio interview I did with the public affairs officer for the National Guard, said that 40% of those that will be going this time have been there once before, and 20% have gone more than twice.